Welcome to Pay It Forward. Today I'm showing you a new little pattern that I've designed, and it is a simple little fabric envelope. Now I've made this one up for you all in a standard size and also in a little gift card size, which is really handy. Now as usual, all you need to do is click on the link in the description below and you'll be able to download your free pattern templates, print them out, and then I'll show you how it's done. Let me show the things that you're going to need to make a little envelope today. Now you'll receive both templates for both sizes in your download. Today I'm going to be demonstrating on the larger one just because that's easier. When you make up the little one, you follow exactly the same steps. All that's different is obviously your little buttons are a little bit smaller. So we're going to pop that one aside and we're going to start work on this one. Now you'll have received your download and it's just one pattern piece. Make sure that you put in your little markings that will be on your pattern piece. They're very important. The way that I make this up and cut it out is that first of all I choose an interior fabric and an exterior fabric, and you can see with this one that I put the nice bright bold one on the inside and a tighter, a more plain print on the outside, just because anything that we're putting on the front here really shows up better on just a finer, more of a plain print. Now, and also with this one you can see that I've actually used I've just done a fussy cut out of some of the little characters that I've got on here. On the one that I'm doing now to demonstrate with, I'll just be doing just a plain heart shape for you to see. It's very simple, same thing with a little stamp. So to make up this fabric, which is a doubled fabric, this is how we do it. First of all, you interface with I use a woven fusible interfacing. You can see that's a sort of a light to medium weight. So first of all I cut two rectangles, one of this fabric, one of that one, and I interface them both, and then I join those two rectangles together with some heat and bond. So just a sheet of heat and bond joins them both together, and then I pop my template on that rectangle and I cut out my shape from that. And then you've got a lovely weight. It's still very flexible, but it's really got some hold. It holds itself like a nice firm envelope. So now I have that pattern piece cut out. Let me show you a couple of other things you're going to need. So you're going to need your pattern, your decorations, applique, whatever you're going to choose to do. This one I'm just going to do a little heart, and I've just chosen to cut out some from the back. Now these have your fusible web applied to the back, so we're just going to iron those on. For the little stamp, I've just cut a little rectangle out, and then around it I've used my pinking shears just to cut a slightly larger rectangle. It gives you that little stamp look which will sit on there. I like to add a couple of buttons to some of my designs just to carry on that design. You can do so many things with these envelopes. Obviously you could do your own embroidery. You ladies who are very clever and do your free motion embroidery on the machine, that would be awesome for this project, but just so quick and easy, and you can pop it under the machine while it's all flat and do all of that work before we fold it up. So that's the beauty of this project. So the first thing that we need to do, or the other thing you're going to need, is a couple of buttons for the back closing. They don't have to be the same. I like them to be the same. They can be two odd buttons, it doesn't matter. So you just need two of those, and you also need a little bit, I've used pearl thread just to make your little securing tie there. You can use anything, bit of yarn, bit of embroidery yarn is fine. So just to reiterate, that's what your fabric is actually made up of. You can see one fabric interfacing, and you can see that it's bonded there together with heat and bond. That's just a little offcut. First thing we're going to do is you've got two little marks on your pattern piece that shows you can probably barely see them there. We fold up that bottom section and meet your marks there and give that a really firm press with a hot iron. Use a protective cloth, because when you've got very thick pieces like this, you find you can get some scorching on the edges, so definitely use a protective cloth. You can also see that I've used the interior of the print is quite a nice bright print, so when you open that up it really pops out at you. So press that one on. The next step is we're going to sew in these little fold lines so that it looks like the envelope is folded up. Now you can just draw a line with your ruler and your marker across there and follow that line. I'm always a bit funny about drawing on fabric. I'm always worried it's not going to come off. So I find a really simple way is to use just your standard masking tape, and I just take a little piece and I line it up just right where I'm going to sew. So just that side of where I'm going to sew. Pop that on, pop that under the machine, and then I can sew on the machine just outside of that piece of masking tape. Then I can pull it off and I've got a lovely straight line. So we're going to do both of those, but at the same time we're going to also top stitch this edge, and it will only be about 2 to 3 millimeters in, and it's just a top stitch that follows that whole top edge, and it just gives it a lovely finish. You can see there on that one. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use a beige toned thread, just something that will show up. Of course you could use a contrasting thread, a matching thread. Just needs to be a thread colour that will show up on your print. Now that those little stitch lines are done, we can flip that one over, and our next step is to do any kind of applique. Any applications that you're going to do now is when we do it. So these little shapes that I've cut out, they have fusible webbing on the back. So I'm just going to press those on in place. Now when you're doing this, you want to remember that we're going to be sewing this side seam. So we don't want anything that's too close to the edge and gets caught up in that seam. And it's nice to have a bit of room around your appliques, and the same with the little stamp and the top. So what you need to do is check your fold, check exactly where that one will be folding over so that you're not going to pop those up too high. When you're happy with where they need to be, you just press them into place. Now that those little shapes are pressed nicely into place, I'm just going to go back to the machine and sew a little top stitch around those edges. We will be leaving a little raw edge, but that will be fine. You see how close that we sew that little stitch just all the way around. Our next step is to sew on any buttons, any extra little pieces that you're going to add on now. I'm just going to recommend that I try and keep all of my little appliques, buttons and all that sort of thing to these lower 3 edges. The reason for that is all of our work on the back, all of our untidy work will be largely hidden in this flap here. So as much as I can, I keep everything down here. You do see a little bit of your applique, but it's pretty neat. So we want to keep this area as clear as we can. So when we open that up, that's quite nice and pretty. So I'm going to sew those little buttons on now. Before I do that, anything that I've put on the front here, of course, you can always now, while you still have your little template open like that, you can add any sort of little extras on here, any appliques, buttons, that sort of thing. Remember to keep in mind that you're sewing those 2 seams and you don't want anything sewn too close to interfere with that. Now that my applique and all my embellishments are in place, I can flip that one over and you can see that I have pressed that top flap down into its position there. Next step is to sew on just our lower button at this stage. So we just want that one to just sit just a little low, probably just about 5 centimeters from the top of the button underneath that flap, and you can put a mark in there if you like. And it's just a matter of stitching that one on while we still have it all open. Our next step is to actually sew up our side seams of our little envelope, and we're going to pop that on the machine. Now I'm going to use my little wonder clips here. Now I will never recommend to you any little tools or sew on that aren't an essential part of my tool kit that I use all the time, because you can certainly waste a lot of money on unnecessary tools. But these really are quite amazing, and they're a lot better with pins, especially with little things like this where the fabric is quite firm. So I just like to pop a clip either side, and then we're going to pop that one under the machine. Just make sure your edges are really lined up, and we're just going to stitch a very small seam, again only about 3, possibly 4 millimeters along that side. Make sure when you get to this junction here, because it's a stress point, we just go back and forth a little, but then we're going to continue on around this whole top edge just to give it a nice top stitch. We're going to meet up with this side, back and forth, and all the way down. You can see that just gives you a really lovely finish inside and out. Our little envelope is also up now at the sides, so our final touches are just that second button so that we can make our fastening. When I sew this one, because we're going to see the underside of that flap, I want to keep it all as tidy as possible. So usually I would sew my button on, I would come from behind and I would leave my knot behind. This time I'm actually going to pop my needle in the front so that that little knot is going to sit behind the button, and it means that there's going to be minimal stitching behind that button. So when we open up that flap, all we're going to see is really just the little bar of stitching that goes across back and forth. Let me show you on the other one. You just end up with just a neat little stitch there that's not offensive when we open that one up. And now our final touch is just to add our little string for our fastening. Simply a matter of just using a single thread. I'm using pearl thread here. I'm just going to knot it once around that top button. I'm going to knot it again. Pull those threads together. We're going to wind it around and down. Then I'm just going to tie a knot close to the end here and snip it off. And there we are, all done. They really are a quick and easy project and such a great professional looking finish. Imagine all the colours you could make up. Fabulous for gifts and for little gift cards. Don't forget the little one. Well, thank you for joining me today for this little project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, perhaps you could give me a thumbs up. That would be beaut. Remember to subscribe, because look, we've got bunnies and bears coming up. So many free patterns, always free templates. Most of all, remember, if something good comes your way, remember to pay it forward, because everybody can. And until our next project together, it's hooroo from me.